The Wizard of Oz, a documentary film about the 1939 musical. In 1939, MGM released the musical fantasy film The Wizard of Oz, based on the children's novel The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, written nearly 40 years earlier by L. Frank Baum. The film starred Judy Garland as Dorothy Gale, a girl living on a Kansas farm with her Aunt Em and Uncle Henry, and dreaming of fantastic places away from the everyday boredom of Kansas. The film opens in sepia-tone film, with Dorothy trying to rally the support of her aunt and uncle and their farmhands against the wealthy and despicable Miss Gulch, who is out to have Dorothy's dog Toto put down for biting her. The film's first musical number arrives in the form of Over the Rainbow, which won the Academy Award for Best Original Song for that year. In 2001, it was declared the greatest American song of the 20th century, and in 2004, it was named the best song from an American film in the last 100 years by the American Film Institute. Unable to best Miss Gulch, Dorothy runs away from home with Toto and encounters Professor Marvel, a traveling con artist posing as a fortune teller. Some clever false reading from a crystal globe by the professor spurs Dorothy to return home, where she is met by a raging cyclone. The others have already retreated to the storm cellar, and Dorothy takes refuge in her bedroom, only to be carried away by the cyclone when it lifts the house off the ground. When the house lands, Dorothy ventures outside to find herself in a bright and colorful world that is a stark contrast to her Kansas home. The use of color in the Land of Oz, as opposed to the sepia tones of the Kansas scenes, has come to be a well-known technique that helped to make the film historically unique and significant. The majority of the film focuses on Dorothy traveling down the yellow brick road from Munchkinland to the Emerald City, hoping to find the famed Wizard of Oz to ask if he can send her home. Along the way, Dorothy makes 4 special friends: Glinda the Good Witch of the North, who gives her the ruby slippers off the feet of the Wicked Witch of the East, who was crushed under Dorothy's house when it landed in Oz. She is the one who points Dorothy in the direction of the wizard. The Scarecrow, whom Dorothy helps down from his pole in a cornfield. The Scarecrow confides in Dorothy that he wishes he had a brain rather than just straw in his head, and she invites him to join her to ask the wizard to grant that request. The Tin Man, whom Dorothy and the Scarecrow rescue from a rust-frozen state, at which he shares his sorrow that the tinsmith never gave him a heart. He too joins the journey, seeking his dream. And the Cowardly Lion, who attacks them as they make their way through a dark forest. The lion retreats from his aggression and begins sobbing, confiding in them that he's always been a coward. They invite him to join them on their quest, that the wizard may grant him courage. As they travel through Oz, Dorothy is continuously pursued and threatened by the Wicked Witch of the West, sister to the now deceased Witch of the East. The witch, of course, blames Dorothy for her sister's death and passionately desires to possess the ruby slippers. When the companions arrive in the Emerald City, they are permitted to see the wizard all together, and he appears to them in the form of a great, giant floating head with a loud, resonant, menacing voice. He concedes to give them the things they ask for if they kill the Wicked Witch of the West, bringing back her broomstick as evidence of her demise. On this second leg of their quest, the witch captures Dorothy with her horrific pet flying monkeys, and she locks her in a room in her castle in Winky Country, taunting her and threatening her that she will kill her once the sands of her hourglass have finished emptying. Despite The Wizard of Oz's modern-day reputation as a family film, the scenes with the Wicked Witch and the flying monkeys caused many to view the movie as inappropriate for children at the time of its release. In 2004, a list was compiled of the scariest movie moments in film history, and the witch and her monkeys placed on the list. Her friends, disguising themselves as Winky soldiers, manage to make their way into the castle and rescue her, but the witch discovers them, and the Winky soldiers corner them in the castle. As the witch hurls a fireball at the Scarecrow, Dorothy grabs a bucket of water and throws it at the flames, splashing the witch in the process. The witch shrieks in horror as she melts away before their eyes. The Winkies, stunned at their leader's demise, fall to their knees and honor Dorothy for freeing them from the witch's tyranny. When the companions bring back the witch's broomstick, they incidentally discover the wizard to be nothing more than a man from Kansas whose hot air balloon had blown off course years ago. He gives the Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Cowardly Lion words of wisdom that suggest that they've had the things they've been seeking all along, and gives them each a token gift to represent what they've come looking for. He agrees to fly Dorothy back home to Kansas in his hot air balloon, but Dorothy misses the departure when Toto takes off after a cat. As she stands there weeping over her hopeless situation, Glinda the Good Witch of the North appears, telling Dorothy that she too had what she needed all along, but merely needed to learn the importance of getting home through her journey. Dorothy clicks the heels of the ruby slippers together 3 times and says, "There's no place like home," and she finds herself awakening in her bed and her loved ones looking over her, implying that the entire journey through Oz had been a dream. The actors who play the farmhands in the opening and concluding scenes of the film also play the Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Cowardly Lion. Frank Morgan portrays both Professor Marvel and the Wizard of Oz, and Margaret Hamilton plays both Miss Gulch and the Wicked Witch of the West. While it's debatable exactly what the artistic motivation for this was, it is largely considered evidence of the Oz trip being a dream, and that her dreaming was influenced by the people from the real world. Aside from Over the Rainbow, and other very well-known songs like If I Only Had a Brain and Ding Dong the Witch is Dead and Follow the Yellow Brick Road, the film contains many pieces of dialogue that have become ingrained in American culture, referenced regularly in pop culture and everyday dialogue. Among these are Lions and Tigers and Bears, oh my, Toto, I've a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore, I'll get you my pretty, and your little dog too, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain, I'm melting, I think I'll miss you most of all. Are you a good witch or a bad witch? It wasn't a dream, it was a place, and you and you and you and you were there. And of course, there's no place like home. At the time of its release, The Wizard of Oz was the most expensive film MGM had produced, and it was not a commercial success, earning only about $3 million on a nearly $3 million budget. Critically, though, the film has always been met with rave reviews, and it was nominated for 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, which it lost to Gone with the Wind. It did win 2 other categories. Initially, the film included a swing song and dance number entitled Jitterbug, intended to appeal to the teenage viewers of the time. The number was cut due to time constraints, and the general consensus since then has been that this was a fortunate decision, since it would have been a very obvious dated cultural reference in a film of otherwise timeless themes. Many pieces of memorabilia from the film have become coveted collector's items over the years, the costume for the Cowardly Lion recently selling for $3 million. There were several pairs of ruby slippers made for the production, most of which have sold to different buyers for around $500,000. One pair, though, can be viewed at the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. Countless reinterpretations, sequels, and tributes of this version of The Wizard of Oz have sprouted up over the years, including the eerie Return to Oz, a Broadway production, a Muppet version, and Disney's recent prequel film, Oz the Great and Powerful. While many interpretations attempt to follow the original book by L. Frank Baum more closely than others, all of them also have a strong influence from the 1939 film.